and thank you to those who are watching this broadcast today. Unfortunately, as a result of COVID-19 and the transition to online learning, Kooringal High School, among a number of other places, were unable to hold normal commemorations. However, we would like to commemorate and show our support to the Wagga Wagga RSL sub-branch and all members of the ADF who have served and continue to serve. I would now like to ask Benjamin Nosworthy to read Acknowledgement of Country.
I acknowledge that we meet on Wiradjuri land, on the sacred hills of Kooringal. I acknowledge the traditional custodians, and I also acknowledge and pay respect to Aboriginal culture that sends an invitation for all custodians to care, value, respect land, water, and history. In honour of all Aboriginal people, we pay respect to all elders past, present, and emerging. I stand with all Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people that are moving forward with inclusion, support, and recognition.
Thank you, Ben. I would now like to invite Amelia Hanson to give the 2020 Anzac Day address on behalf of the Kooringal High School students. Good morning, KHS community. When we were asked to deliver a speech, one of the first things that came to mind was my understanding of the Australian identity and what our role as youth was in ensuring that we continue to remember those who serve our nation. As we stand here today at Kooringal High School, remembering those who fought for our freedom, take time and pause to consider what the true meaning of this significant part of our national identity actually is. As the COVID-19 situation continues to spread, causing significant disruption, fear, and confusion, it is this national identity, the attributes and qualities displayed decades ago by those who fought in the war to end all wars. It is these attributes, these qualities, that we've continued to aspire to look to at times like these when a different war plagues our world. Anzac Day in Australia commemorates the sacrifices of armed forces and civilians during times of war. Men and women in Australia and around the world have made sacrifices, many of which have given their lives. Yet the freedom we enjoy was secured at a price. Since Federation, Australian units have served in the Boer War, the Boxer Rebellion, World War I, World War II, Korea, the Malayan Emergency, the Indonesian Confrontation, Vietnam, the Gulf War, the war against terrorism in Afghanistan and Iraq, and in many peacekeeping operations around the world. In reflecting on why this day is important for the youth of Australia and the world, I think about what many of our former leaders who have expressed of those men and women that have made the sacrifice to serve. As John Howard famously said, "We remember those Australians whose lives were lived in deeds, not years. In sacrifice, not heartbeats in service, not the turned pages of a calendar." These men and women, these strangers from another time, have given us a legacy from the past on which to build the future. Gifts of determination, of compassion and self-confidence, but most of all, of service. A spirit born on the cliffs of Gallipoli, then matured in the mud of the Western Front, in jungles and in deserts, and in desperate struggles on the seas and in the sky. Their story, the legacy of all Australians who have died or suffered in war and armed conflict, have been passed to each one of us. It is the birthright of every child born in Australia, the gift of welcome extended to every migrant. As the youth of Australia, the future of this nation, it is not only our birthright to hear and learn of the legacy of those Australians who engaged in conflict for our peace and sovereignty, but to ensure that we continue to recognise, value and remember those who served, that we live by the values that enriched our forefathers and foremothers and seek to achieve peace. Thank you. Thank you, Amelia. Although many residents of Wagga Wagga and the surrounding area have engaged on a number of conflicts and engagements, this year we would like to read the names of those men who embarked on the Kangaroo March. In late 1915 and early 1916, recruitment marches were held across the country. The longest march in New South Wales and Queensland was the Kangaroo March, which began on December 1st, 1915. 88 Wagga men volunteered, most in their early 20s. By the time the men reached the outskirts of Sydney, there were over 220 in all. The march, with rousing cheer, stirring music, and sustenance support from the townsfolk along the way to Harefield, Junee, Ilba, Buthgura, Cootamundra, and Wallanbeeden. At Wallanbeeden on December 9th, they were addressed by the Governor-General of Australia. The march continued to the Murrumbidgee and Hayden through Geelong, Billong, and Bowing to Yass, averaging 98 miles per day before finishing at Campbelltown, where the kangaroo recruits went to train into Sydney so as to retain the country's contingent. The kangaroos and their sweethearts, families, and friends were changed irrevocably. Some died, some stayed in Europe, and some never recovered from their wounds. Many returned to Wagga Wagga to live long, healthy lives. We will now read the names of those men. A.J. Arndt, T.N. Baker, M.J. Ball, J. Beaver, W.E. Beaver, A.L. Box, W.E. Bradley, C. Brooker, L.L. Brown, F.F. Brown, W.G. Braun, P. Buckley, J. Brooke, C.F. Byrne, H.A. Cameron, H.C. Carpenter, L.R. Carabolt, V. Castle, W.E. Caver, H. Clark, F.S. Collins, C.E. Cotton, F.P. Crowley, T. Cuxack. C.F. Darwell, S. Day, S. Dennis, J. Davenport, J. Doherty, G. H. Durkin, C. Fitzgerald, E. L. Fitzgerald, J. Fleming, R. J. Florence, W. A. Flynn, V. Fremantle, L. J. Gaffney, H. P. Gill, W. J. Gooder, W. Granger, A. Gray, E. Hamilton, H. Hamilton, W. Hatton, L. L. Hishon, E. J. Holloway, F. Hopkins, W. C. Highland.
A. R. Jackson, L. Jackson, A. A. Kearns, R. Kenny, S. Keys, W. C. Ledwell, J. Mansfield, F. W. McAllister, T. McCrory, P. H. McLeod, O. McManus, W. H. McNeish, R. McPherson, J. Moby, E. J. Moore, H. E. Murphy, W. J. Murphy, B. O'Halloran, T. Oakman, A. Oliver, H. H. Phillips, P. H. Rake, F. T. Rayner, C. W. B. Redden. M. Redhead, R. W. Resso, W. J. Richards, P. Robinson, J. Ryan, G. Stremmer, F. Schwind, P. F. Seckhold, D. Simmons, J. E. Sinclair, H. C. Soames, A. J. Squires, A. Stearman, G. Stearman, A. Stephenson, G. Sullivan, C. W. S. Taylor, W. J. Walker, R. F. Walton, W. H. Webb, W. J. Wheeler, R. A. Wild, R. Williamson, T. Woodcroft.
Every year, Kooringal High School participates in the Member of the Riverina, Michael McCormack's writing competition. This competition gives the students at KHS the opportunity to compose short stories and poems dedicated to Anzac Day. Ben will now read a poem written by Year 10 student Jonathan Malhan.
I remember the fresh smell of the emerald field, the golden canola that would so delightfully yield. I remember the golden rays of sunlight during those hot days, the footy field where we would cheerfully graze. I remember the sage and syrup-stained bidgie, where there was no rage or cause for dismay. Playful and meek as the water would splash across my cheek. But here I am only weak, surrounded by what can only be described as bleak. What am I doing here? The nights are long, cold, and damp. The rancid aroma of death and destruction is all we know. The disease-ridden rats give us company while we think. We think and think. We think as the sun passes from east to west. We think and we shoot. The flourishing fair fields of the Riverina have been replaced by the muddy, malign meadows of France. The lovely pastures taken and ripped from us as swiftly as the thrust of a bayonet into a fellow man. The rich, warm touch of a loved one traded for the destitute, cold hand of death. The charcoal meadow we reside in, infested and detested, how we long for the sweet lilies that are well rested. Blood splashes across my face in the absence of the bidgie's warm water grace. Hanging on its silent desperation, the violent morale, castration besetting our quiet emptiness. The rolling plains of New South Wales we once called home. We knows when we shall return, no need for concern. We are disposable and replaceable. That is all there is to discern.
Thank you, Ben, and what a great composition, Jonathan. I will now invite the school captains to lay the wreath in honour of those who served and fell. One of the wreaths will be on behalf of the staff and the other on behalf of the students of KHS. Now I would read the Ode to the Fallen. After the reading of the ode, we will respond with, "We will remember them." This will be followed by the sounding of the last post, which will be conducted by Year 9 student Charlotte Burke. Following this, we will observe 1 minute silence, followed by the reveille to remember the fallen. After the reveille, we will respond with, "Lest we forget." They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end against odds uncounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. That concludes our Anzac Day ceremony for 2020. We wish everyone a safe weekend and encourage students to complete the activities on our Facebook page and send images of what you have achieved. Thank you.